It had been a crazy summer here in Hong Kong this year. And that is the year of 2023 for the record. In July, we had Typhoon Talim, which went up to T8, but it was kind of a dud, to be honest. However, that was just a taste of what was about to come, which was Typhoon Sola. That was the first T10 in 5 years, which was kind of crazy, but not too crazy. I think it was actually the weakest T10 in history, actually, now having looked at the records. But then we had the record-breaking rain that was Typhoon Haikui. So stay with me if you want to learn about what it was like to live through a 4-typhoon year in Hong Kong. The typhoon warning system in Hong Kong, they're like tennis scores. They don't make sense. And the system is for describing how windy it is in Hong Kong and not how strong the typhoon is at the center hole. Most of the time, T1 can actually be very sunny and hot outside because of how pressure systems work. Just don't ask me how. At T3, it still means nothing. You'll feel some breeze, and usually it will actually be a bit cooler because the cyclone is close enough that you don't get the hot, high pressure effect that causes the temperature to, I don't know what I'm talking about. But at T8, things are getting serious. Yes, the number system goes from 1 to 3 to 8, which is how my daughter counts, coincidentally. By T8, it's time to stock up your veggies and fruit, like how people in southern US ransack grocery stores for milk and bread every time the weather forecast says it's gonna snow half an inch. Banks and schools would be the first ones to close. Kindergartens actually close at T3, I think. But if you work at a restaurant or a convenience store or a grocery store, tough luck. Still have to work. Or even if you work at a movie theater. Hong Kong people love going to the movie theater in the middle of a typhoon. For the most part, a T8 typhoon is like an impromptu holiday for Hong Kong people. We would pack into grocery stores, which are still open, and then go home to play mahjong all night, or go to a karaoke bar, or movie hopping, depending on how old you are. And you better hope that the signal isn't cancelled by the next morning, because otherwise you still have to go back to work. And you'll beat yourself up for assuming that you get the day off. The Hong Kong people have no respect for T8. We're like the third piggy. You know, the one with the brick house? Except instead of a brick house, we live in these huge apartment blocks. But if you live above like the 50th floor and higher, you will feel the building sway in the wind. And some people could actually get seasick from it. At T8, it's also when you'll see stores taping up their windows. Not to help secure them, that would be silly. It's just there to help the cleanup if the windows do shatter. But for the most part, it's just a gesture. T9, nobody thinks about T9. T9 is like the silver medal of typhoon signals. And the gold medal goes to T10. When it's T10, it's time to seek shelter. At T10, everything would shut down, essentially. So if you're a restaurant worker who relies on buses or the above-ground part of the subway, you better hope you don't have any asshole diner who refuse to leave when T9 is announced, because you may just miss the last bus or train home. There are usually a lot of downed trees, but for the most part, they're roped off and cut up pretty quickly. That was the case with the T10 we had this year, Typhoon Sola. Don't worry, I'll get to the crazy rain of Typhoon Haikui soon, but let's take a break and talk about the Ghost Festival. So I had been looking forward to checking out this year's Ghost Festival because it will be the first one I get to see since I've moved back to Hong Kong. I was worried about it initially because Typhoon Saola hit just as the festival organizers have finished putting up the tents for the festival. Luckily, because they built the tents with steel scaffolding instead of a bamboo one, the structure stayed up, but the wind did tear up the tarp and some of the handmade signs. Anyway, about a day later, a day after the typhoon was done, less than 24 hours since the T10 warning was cancelled, the show was back on. This is also known as the Yulan Festival, also known as the Ghost Festival. It's a festival celebrated by a bunch of different groups from southern China, a bunch of different groups of people from southern China. It is celebrated around the middle of the 7th month of the Chinese calendar. According to the legends, the gates of the underworld are open during the entire 7 months of the calendar, so it's a chance to pay tribute to the ghosts, whether they're your family or not. And the middle of the 7th month is when the ghost activities are at their height, so people would put on a show to try to make them happy. This was also the first ghost festival since my father passed away, so my mom prepared some packages for us to burn a few days before. The idea is to send him some stuff in case he still hasn't reincarnated yet, in a couple of like addressed packages, and then some unpackaged things for the sort of homeless or kind of gangster ghost in the area, so they leave my father alone. At the main festival, there are also some paper statues of random gods to keep the ghost in line. The gods are kind of bouncers or securities for the show in case the ghost starts acting up and disturb the living, like possessing them and stuff. They also give out lucky rice at the end of the festival, which so that's what these people are moving here. I didn't stick around for that ceremony. There's a separate stage playing just crazy improv music to welcome the ghosts from getting out of the underworld to hang out, which I think, by the way, technically I think the main show it's only for the gods to enjoy, and your average kind of beta ghost are only supposed to go to this stage to dance to this racket. By the way, there are a bunch of superstitions surrounding things that you shouldn't be doing around the time of the Ghost Festival. Here are a few. Don't wear high heels because it will make you look like a ghost, because ghosts float around without their heels touching the ground, and they may follow you around if they think you're one of them. Don't hang clothes outside because ghosts can attach to them if they fit their size. Don't play with bells or wind chimes or whistles because those things sounds like the instruments shamans use to summon the dead. And don't bring your umbrella inside after using them outside because ghosts may hitch a ride under your umbrella and follow you home. Speaking of umbrellas, 2 days after the festival was done, Hong Kong experienced its rainiest day in recorded history as a result of the third typhoon this year so far, Typhoon Haikui. It was only T1 the whole time, but we had the black rain warning for the entire time. So, in addition to the T warning system, which deals with the wind, we also have rain warnings, which goes like amber rain, red rain, and then black rain. By the way, amber is just called that in English because yellow rain sounds like piss, I guess. But in Chinese, we just call it 黄雨, which is yellow rain. So when the warning is at the black level, everything closes like it's T8. The rain broke the record for the most rain in an hour, which is like 160 millimeters, and the most rain in a day, which was like 2 feet of rain in 24 hours, something like that. Sorry for mixing up the units there. Most people in Hong Kong had never seen anything like it. At least 2 subway stations were flooded. The underground portion of the subway, which, mind you, usually stays open even in T10 sometimes. They had to close because of the rain, because the tunnels got flooded, which I don't think had ever happened. For a few spots where a bunch of downhill roads meet, it was crazy, like this road in Taiwan. But Hong Kong being Hong Kong, everything bounced back relatively quickly. I went for a run the day after the rain stopped, and this was that station that was flooded the day before. And I went by the crazy river street in Taiwan a week later to get the marble plaque done for my father's urn hole. That's the best translation I could come up with. And it looked okay. Originally, my mom wanted to go with the funeral home that handled his cremation. But after doing some Googling, I figured that they were overcharging us by a lot. So I said, no thanks, we'll take it somewhere else. We waited about a month for the headstone to be finished. Meanwhile, it was Annie's first Mid-Autumn Festival in Hong Kong. It was really hot for a festival called Mid-Autumn, but it was still a lot of fun. Then, less than a week later, we had Typhoon Koinu, which went up to T9, and it happened over a weekend, so people aren't too pleased. And then, 3 days later, we finally interred my father's ashes after almost 2 years of waiting for a slot. My mom and I spent the day before preparing the packages that we were going to send to my dad in the afterlife by burning them. We bought a seguai, which translates to clothes for the 4 seasons. Then there were the different kinds of afterlife currency. There are the kaichin, which are these paper strips with holes in them. They're like ancient lower denomination cash for clearing the road of like beggar ghosts and like also local gods and gatekeepers. You can think of them like dollar bills for tipping whoever's in your way. Then there are the gold and silver sheets, which just represents gold and silver because the afterlife still have a gold standard. My mom insisted on folding the gold sheets into tubes because she said they will be worth more that way, although she wasn't sure if it was just a rumor she heard. Besides the gold standard, there's also a credit card as well. There are also these afterlife versions of American dollars and Chinese renminbis and Hong Kong dollars. They didn't exist when I was a kid, by the way. Instead, we had these kind of $1 billion dollar bills, which seriously, they would get more zeros every year. So I guess the central bank for the afterlife have decided to peg their currency to the American dollar to combat inflation. Then there are these papers with spells on them that are supposed to help my dad apply for reincarnation. After everything is stacked nicely, we stuffed them into this huge envelope and wrote the recipient's name on them. We also made one for his parents. Poor dad. Still have to kind of pick up things for his parents in the afterlife. But I was wondering, aren't his parents supposed to have reincarnated a long time ago? I'm not sure. but a lot of these kind of folk religion things aren't consistent, because that's just how they are. The new Urnhole building was pretty nice. The view was very nice. We put his ashes inside, laid out the offerings, and then the stonemaker sealed the headstone. We then burned the packages we prepared the day before, including a stack of condolence letters and tributes his friends sent. And then later, my sister, who lived in the US, called my mom and said she had a dream that my dad showed up at home and told me that he didn't want to be moved out of the house so soon. Sorry, Dad. We'll come see you, though. Twice a year at least. I promise. My name is Yu Yun, and once again, thank you for watching.